Optimizing your Layers panel. Your Layers panel is one of the most important things you should focus on while working. It's absolutely essential you keep it very well organized because this will help you tremendously. Let's break it down into several parts so you can easily get an overview. First, naming your layers. This is incredibly important because A, it allows you to use the search option up top, B, it makes it easier for you to sort through your layers, C, it makes your PSD file more approachable in the sense that other designers can easily understand what you did. It also helps developers since they can easily identify key layers they're looking for. So naming them correctly is a must. I suggest you do this immediately after you create your new layer, or at least every 5 minutes after you've made 5 or 6 new ones. One thing you can do is disable the copy text that appears by default when you duplicate a layer. Go to the Layers panel options and disable this last setting. It's very important you name your layers in key moments. For example, if I'm going to create a table with 10 dividers, I'll create my first 1 pixel line, name it divider, and then I'll make 9 more copies. It makes sense to plan ahead. Regarding your naming, I recommend you use fairly easy to understand shortcuts. For example, I like to use BG for background, BTN for button, and so on. These are classics, but you can name them as you want, as long as you're consistent with the naming scheme. Groups. Groups are folders that hold your layers. All groups must be named correctly, and in each web design project there should be at least some of these ones: header, hero area, testimonial, left-right main content, form, footer. That's the standard I use. In each one, you should have several other folders. For example, in the header, you might have a folder for your logo, one for your login area, one for your shopping cart. In some cases, you may even have a third level of folders where the shopping cart is broken down into other folders as well. As a guideline, you shouldn't make a group for only one layer. For example, for the logo, if it's composed out of several layers, that's fine, but never do it just for one. Don't go overboard with them either. I recommend you keep it at 3 levels tops. That means a folder in a folder in a folder. These are called nested folders, and in Photoshop CS4 they are limited to 5 levels. That's something to keep in mind if you're planning on sending it to someone with an older Photoshop version. Groups can have layer styles of their own, but I highly discourage that. It might save you a bit of time, but at the end of the day you're just going to cause headaches both to you and your developer. You can set adjustment layers to affect only certain parts of your design by using Ctrl-Alt-G. This might come in handy if you want to experiment with different things before you commit to a certain direction. Collapsed layer styles. This is a must because every web design project has several tens or even hundreds of layers. This means real estate is limited, so always select all your layers and click on this small arrow here to either expand or collapse your styles. I always religiously close them, no exception. Small thumbnails. This is another aspect of the Layers panel. Right-click on a thumbnail and you'll have the ability to change their size. Small is absolutely the best way to go because you gain space, but you still see the type of layer you're working on. This last part is important because you need to know if this is a shape layer, and this is its icon, a rasterized layer with this normal thumbnail, or a smart object with this little icon here. And while we are here, you should also check this option, Clip Thumbnails to Layer Bounds. This will help you better see your layer. Deleting unused layers. From time to time, you'll see me experiment with different techniques and ideas. In case things don't go as planned, I like to duplicate my work up until that point so I can try something else if my technique didn't give me great results. This means I regularly have some hidden layers here and there, which obviously messes up my layers panel. When you're done with something, always delete your trash. Never leave anything behind because as the project grows, things will start to get out of control and you'll end up working far more than you anticipated. Labeling with colors. This is a useful feature when you have hover states, down states, expanded states, and so on. By right-clicking next to the eye icon, you get this panel with several color choices. Use these to distinguish trash layers from hidden states. This way you'll be sure you aren't deleting important things in your project. A few other things to keep in mind about the Layers panel. I recommend you always have it span the entire height of your workspace. This makes it easier for you to group select lots of layers, like this. Use Shift or Control and you'll make your life significantly easier. Another thing, don't try to move layers onto another tab from the Layers panel. It's not going to work. You need to move them from your canvas. I've seen this happen more often than I should have. I know I already mentioned this, but it can't hurt to say it again. Okay, moving on. I don't recommend you lock a layer. I've never had any real reason to do it. I find it a pain when I have to unlock something. It basically says you're somewhat clumsy and you might move something without noticing. And that's obviously not the case. I've seen a lot of designers lock their background layer, but if you do that, you won't be able to select your canvas with the Control-Click method. That's essential because when you're selecting multiple layers, you might want to easily deselect them, and your canvas is your best choice. Linking layers or folders isn't something I recommend either. If your PSD is well organized, you have no reason to use that function. I see it very similar to the auto-select function. It seems like a good idea, but in reality, it breaks down your workflow. All of these tips are somewhat obvious pieces of advice, but from my experience, they significantly improve your workflow. But if you work amazingly well by linking layers together, then that's fine by me. Another big advantage of having an organized layers panel is the ability to reuse elements. For example, if you design an awesome testimonials area, you might want to adapt and reuse it in some other project. That can't happen if your layers panel looks like this. But just in case you're faced with such a situation, use these quick techniques to easily tidy things up. While on the Move tool, hold the Control key and click on a layer on the canvas. It will automatically be selected in your Layers panel, and then you can easily rename it or group it with another one. If you have some extra layers you can't seem to find, hold the Control key and click on their thumbnail. This will make a selection from their outline and the marching ants will be easier to spot. In some cases that might not work because you'll get a message saying there's no visible pixels. Okay, then select the entire canvas with Control A and then use the alignment tools up top to reposition the layer in the top center of the screen. Remember, Control Z is your friend. Use it constantly. Control Z pressed 2 times simply toggles between your last action. If you want to go several steps back, use Control Alt Z. I'm very set in my ways regarding the tips I've just mentioned because I strongly believe they make a big difference in your workflow. This is one of the major pitfalls designers struggle with because they don't understand these little things add up. And once you optimize your methods of working with the Layers panel, you'll never want to go back to anything else.